Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today I am sharing 2 Halloween card projects that feature the same die, so we're doing a 1 die 2 ways, and I'm going to be using some brand new products from Pretty Pink Posh. Now these products are brand new today. I'm going to show you what Pretty Pink Posh sent me, and then we will use a few of these products to create today's cards. Now, this features a variety of stamps and coordinating dies and standalone dies. There are also some stencils in this release and embellishments. If you want to check out the full release, be sure to click the YouTube description below. I will have a link to that full release. Now, I just showed you the Halloween corner stamps and coordinating dies, and I will be using those stamps in today's projects. This is the Batty for You stamps and coordinating dies. I love this little moon with the bats in the corner. Next up is the Upright Greeting stamp set. Now this is a greeting stamp, but all of them are vertical instead of horizontal, and I've seen some really cool samples created with this stamp set. Here is a look at the spiderweb border die. I will be using this in a card project next Monday, so if you want to see that, be sure to stop back by here. And then we have stitched ghosts. Now the thing I like about this is there's several different sizes of ghosts. All of them have that outer stitching, but there's also different faces that you can use on each of those. Now we have a couple of standalone die sets. The first one at the top is called the Ghost Holder die set. I will be featuring that next week as well. And then the one below is the Bat Shaker die set. And that's really fun to kind of experiment with the brand new embellishments that are available from Pretty Pink Posh. Now, I am a sucker for any kind of cupcake die, and this big Halloween cupcake die set from Pretty Pink Posh is adorable. Today, I'm going to be featuring the Candy Corn Shaker die set. I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to use this die set and create some really fun Halloween cards. Then we have the Build a Monster die set. Now this is very cool because you have 3 body shapes here, and then you have all of the horns and the eyeballs, the little accessories, arms and legs that you can use for each of these. There's some little fangs. So you can kind of mix and match these dies to create a monster to your liking. It would also be fun to use some googly eyes on these. Let's have a look at some of the stencils that are in the release. First up is the Layered Halloween Wreath. This is a 3-piece stencil, and I love this because it creates a nice big layered wreath, but you could use parts of the stencil to create just a little area of stenciling, or you can use just 1 or 2 of the stencils, and you can really use this in a lot of different ways. The last 2 stencils are Halloween Words and Scattered Bats. All of these products are available now over at Pretty Pink Posh, including some others that I'm not sharing here today, so be sure to check that out. Now here's a look at the color palette I'll be using today. I decided to bring in a cream colored cardstock. Then I have Clementine and Nectar, and also a dark gray, which is called Mushroom. All of these colors, aside from the Ivory cardstock, are Concord and 9th cardstocks, and I will have them linked below. Now I wanted to create some candy corns in kind of a different color palette, and I wanted to be able to run a couple of these cardstocks through at the same time using the die. This is all 1 die, but it cuts 3 separate stitched pieces. So by cutting my cardstock down into strips, I can cut a couple of these colors at a time and save myself a little bit of time. So I'm going to use the Ivory cardstock for the very pointed tip of the candy corn, and then I am going to have the Clementine color in the middle, and I will have the Nectar at the bottom. Now this is definitely an alternative color scheme for a candy corn, but I loved it when I put these colors together. I'll be making 3 of these colorful candy corns, and so I'm doing all of these steps 3 times. And once I have those first 2 colors die cut, I'm going to take that same die and I'm going to line up the orange cardstock there in the middle and cut just that portion. I'll also take the solid candy corn piece and die cut that from some white cardstock 3 times. That will give me a place for all of my separate pieces to kind of adhere to and create one solid piece. So I'm just moving through this and die cutting 3 of everything that I need, and then I can put them together. This didn't take long at all, and this is the first way that you can really use this die set. You can create different colors of stitched candy corns. You can create your own custom colored candy corns, and I love that so much. But I did want to point out, did you see how my white cardstock overlapped my orange cardstock as I sent it through the die cut machine? Don't do that. It left a little crease on my orange cardstock. It turns out to be okay in the end, but if you can avoid doing that, I definitely would. Now, once I have all of my pieces die cut, I am going to take and apply liquid glue all over that solid white candy corn piece. And that's going to allow me to place each of these individual pieces onto that backer and kind of slide them into place, make sure that the edges are aligned with the background, and put all of these pieces together to create one piece of candy corn. Now, you may have noticed that I put my liquid glue going vertically along the candy corn. I did that strategically or on purpose because I wanted the edges of each of these pieces that I'm placing on top to be adhered to the base of the candy corn. So by doing my glue kind of pattern vertically, I make sure that there is glue along the edges of each of those colored pieces as well. Now I'm grabbing the Halloween Corners stamp set and I'm taking the Happy Halloween sentiment. I have some white cardstock in my Misty stamping tool, and I'm just gonna make sure that that's in the lower right-hand corner and that my stamp is aligned down there. And I'm using the Waffle Flower grip mat inside of my Misty stamping tool. Once I have everything positioned, I'm gonna go ahead and ink up my Happy Halloween sentiment in the mushroom colored ink from Concord and Ninth, and I'm gonna stamp that down. Now, I didn't get a great stamping the first time through, so I just left my cardstock in place and my stamp in place, and I re-inked and stamped again to create a nice solid stamped image. And once I have that stamped, I can go ahead and remove my cardstock from my Misty stamping tool, line up the coordinating die, run that through my die cut machine, and I have an adorable die cut sentiment. And I am a sucker for a good die cut stamped sentiment. I think they're so cute. Now, honestly, my first instinct with a large die cut like this is kind of just slap it in the middle of the card and let it stand on its own. But I really wanted to create a different type of layout here. So I have two of my assembled candy corns, and I have a piece of white cardstock that I've die cut down using an A2 layer die. And I'm just gonna kind of bring a couple of these in and allow them to overlap the edge of that card front that I'll be using. Now for my sentiment, I did die cut a couple of extra layers from plain white cardstock. I added some liquid glue on top, and I'm gonna stack up that sentiment to give it a little bit of weight on my card front. And once I kind of figure out that I like where everything is landing, I'm going to pick up my candy corn, add a little bit of tape runner adhesive on the back side of it, and position it onto my card front. Now, this tape runner adhesive is only meant to be a temporary solution to hold these in place. I will actually trim off the excess and then remove the candy corn and add some foam adhesive on the back to give them a little bit of dimension. But this little bit of tape runner adhesive on the back will hold it in place so that I can do all of my trimming. Now you can see I'm using my finger here kind of to make an L to see where this will crop, make sure that I like everything. And once I have everything in the position that I'm liking, I'll flip this over and trim along the edge of that card front that I've created using a nice sharp pair of scissors. This is my Spellbinders Precision Shears, and I love these so much. They cut through foil so beautifully. I mean, seriously, if you don't have a pair of these, you need them. So once I get those trimmed down, before that adhesive really sets up, I'm gonna go ahead and remove those from the card front. And then I can add my foam adhesive on the back of those to give them some dimension. Now you could leave them flat on the card like that, but if you know me at all, you know that I love some dimension on my cards. Now I have a piece of this mushroom colored cardstock, and I have a sentiment from the Halloween Corners stamp set that says no tricks, just treats. I'm gonna stamp that on the bottom of this cardstock that I've prepped with my powder tool in some Versamark ink. And then once I've stamped my sentiment, I'll take this over, I'll sprinkle on some white embossing powder, and I'll heat set that with my heat tool. Now, once that cools, I'm going to use a microfiber cloth to remove any of that excess powder tool, and I'll use my Tim Holtz mini guillotine trimmer to trim this down into a strip. So I just trimmed a little bit off the bottom. You can see how thin of little strips I can actually trim off of this, and then I trimmed along the top as well, and I will trim off the excess on the side. And eventually I'm going to take some scissors and I'm going to cut that at an angle, but I want to get my candy corn assembled on my card front first. So I added some foam adhesive to the back of that, and in order for me to have a little bit of wiggle room with these, getting them into the right place, I covered the foam adhesive with some liquid glue too. That's gonna allow these to slide around on the card front so that I can make sure they're lined up along those edges where I trimmed them. Once those are in place, I am going to adhere that sentiment strip to my die cut sentiment using just a little liquid glue. And I'll trim the right side of that sentiment strip into an angle, and I'll position this on my card front using, again, you guessed it, foam adhesive to add a little bit of dimension. Now I'm using my tweezers to get that in just the right place. I will add my card front to a soft gray card base using, again, foam adhesive. And I'll finish this off using a mixture of sizes of the Pretty Pink Posh sparkling clear sequins. These have long been a favorite of mine, and they will always be a favorite of mine, I think. So card number 1 features the die cuts kind of put together in a fun layout using really just partial die cuts to cover a card front. And card number 2, we're going to create a shaker card. So I'm taking the die that's included in the stamp set that creates this separated shaker window. Now you could use the solid die to create your shaker window as well, but I love that this gives me the flexibility of having different shaker wells. So I can actually keep the sequins separated from that pointed part, from the middle part, and from the bottom part. Now, once I die cut that die from my white cardstock, I flipped it over, I added some liquid glue on the back, and then I added my acetate, and that will hold all of my shaker bits inside my shaker card. Then I can start adding some thin strips of foam adhesive. So you see, I'm adding foam adhesive between each of those areas of the window, and then I'm going to add it all around the outside edges of this window on the back side of this card front. So I will have 3 different shaker wells where I can put 3 different groupings of sequins or beads or whatever shaker filler that I want, and I'll be able to keep them separate. So if you wanted to do 3 different colors of sequins here, you could definitely do that. I'm using the same color of sequins, but I'm going to be using different sizes of sequins for each area. So on the top, I'm going to use some 4mm sequins. In the middle section, I'm going to use some 6mm sequins. These are all sparkling clear sequins. And then in the bottom section, I'm going to be using some 8mm sequins. Now I started here by putting 4mm sequins into the middle part, and I scooped those up and changed to the 6mm. I thought this was a great opportunity to just kind of show off different elements in each of the windows. Just be sure that if you're adding different elements to each part of the window, that you make sure that each of those areas is enclosed with foam tape on the back side of your card front. Once I have my sequins onto that colored candy corn that I created earlier, I removed the backer from the foam adhesive, and then I placed that onto my candy corn. Then I stamped that same sentiment, that Happy Halloween sentiment, from the Halloween Corner stamp set, but this time I used the Clementine ink, and I die cut additional layers from the 3 colors of cardstock that I used to create my candy corn. So I have an Ivory cardstock, the Nectar cardstock, and the Clementine cardstock. And as I add these layers, I'm slightly offsetting so that I get some colored shadows on my stamped and die cut sentiment. I love to use kind of this stacked sentiment idea where they're kind of offset just a bit to bring a little bit more color to my card projects, especially if I feel like it just needs a little something more. Now, before I adhere my sentiment onto my card front, I did take some gold thread and I wrapped it around my fingers a few times to create kind of a messy nest. I placed that onto my card front. You can see I'm doing a little bit of adjusting with my tweezers. And then I'll take my sentiment that has some foam adhesive on the back side and I'll just put it right over the top of that nest of gold thread, and it's going to sandwich my thread between the cardstock and the sentiment and hold it in place. I finished my card project off by adding a layer of matte gold cardstock behind that card front that I created, that shaker card front. I'm adding some sparkling clear sequins to the card front using some liquid glue, and I placed all of that onto an A2 top folding card base that I created from some Ivory cardstock. So there are two very different ways to use this adorable candy corn shaker die set, new from Pretty Pink Posh. I think both are fun options, but let me know in the comments below which of these two cards is your favorite. I think it's actually that first one that I created for me anyway. Now, as always, I will have links to the featured products used in this project in the description at YouTube, so if you're looking for something in particular, be sure you check there, or you can head on over to my blog at sprinkledwithglitter.com. I'll have that linked below as well. Over there, you'll find more still shots, more information, a complete list of supplies, as well as some information on a blog hop that is happening over the next 3 days to celebrate this brand new release from Pretty Pink Posh. I think you're going to find lots of inspiration, and there are prizes to be had, so be sure to join me over there. As always, I want to say thank you so much for stopping by and hanging out with me today. I'm so glad you're here. I hope you enjoyed these projects, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here so you don't miss any of the paper crafting and card making video tutorials I share here. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the very end. You know, if you've made it this far, you are one of my favorites. To subscribe to my channel, go ahead and click the button on the left side of the screen. And here's a couple more video tutorials I thought you might enjoy.